Directivos de la feria, representantes de marcas internacionales, quiero empezar por decir que es para mí un gran honor y un gran placer abrir este importantísimo foro en nombre del Gobierno de Aragón y en nombre de la presidenta de Aragón, Luisa Fernanda Rudy, darles la bienvenida a esta tierra y desearles en ella la más feliz y fecunda estancia. Quiero simplemente decir un par de palabras sobre la importancia de este foro y de esta feria, y no es exagerado si afirmo, como han recogido los medios de comunicación en estos días, que estamos ante el mayor espectáculo tecnológico agrario que existe en estos momentos en el mundo. Zaragoza, en estos momentos, durante estos días, no solo se convierte en la capital de España en esta materia, no solo también se convierte en la capital de Europa, sino que se puede decir que es la capital del mundo en materia de maquinaria agrícola. Y aquí están, gracias también a la presencia de todos ustedes, todas las firmas más importantes en como decía, un espectáculo auténtico de modernidad, de progreso y de tecnología. Como saben ustedes, hay expositores de más de 30 países. Se espera que concurran a Zaragoza visitantes de más de 80 países. Más de 1.200 expositores, más que el año pasado, 700 internacionales. Es decir, estamos, como decía antes, ante el mayor espectáculo tecnológico y en la capital mundial con respecto a la tecnología de maquinaria agraria. Yo agradezco la presencia de insignes firmas aquí presentes, prácticamente todas, de todos los ángulos, de todas las materias, en las que se va a establecer un fecundo foro de conversación y de intercambio de pareceres para avisorar las tendencias más importantes del futuro en este sector. Y quiero subrayarlo con toda la importancia, este es un sector fundamental no solo para España y para Portugal y para Europa, es un sector fundamental para el mundo, porque lo que este sector tiene entre manos es la resolución del primer problema mundial más angustioso, que es el problema del hambre. Eso es la cuestión hacia la que el mundo se avecina con el aumento de población, no solamente en la cuenca mediterránea, sino en todo el mundo, y precisamente para resolver ese problema, que como digo es el primer problema mundial, están aquí ustedes para discutir esas tendencias, para poder conversar entre unos y otros cuál es la mejor forma de enfocar las estrategias más oportunas y, en definitiva, para dar un salto, y me permito decirlo así, y no son palabras ampulosas, un salto importante para la humanidad. Por lo tanto, con estas palabras y reiterando la bienvenida que en nombre de la presidenta les doy, deseo que esta sesión sea muy fecunda. Están los ponentes más brillantes que se pueden contar en estos momentos, que sea muy fecunda, que avancen en este planteamiento, porque ese avance no solamente será importante para todas las industrias aquí establecidas, las que aquí están exponiendo, sino que también lo será para España, para Portugal, para Europa y, permitidme que lo diga así, para el mundo. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos.
La segunda edición de MedWins, que como saben es un foro de debate que, coincidiendo con FIMA, organizan, como decía antes, Feria de Maquinaria y ANSEMAT, siendo esta última la asociación que representa a las empresas fabricantes e importadoras de maquinaria agrícola, tiene por objeto aprovechar el marco de la feria y la llegada de fabricantes y comercializadores de maquinaria agrícola de España y otros países para informar a los profesionales del sector acerca de la situación de los mercados de maquinaria agrícola de nuestro entorno, con incidencia especial en los mercados de los países mediterráneos. Ello se debe a que España cuenta con un gran número de agricultores y exportadores de productos agrícolas mediterráneos, entre los que destacan el vino, el aceite, las frutas o las hortalizas. Y vamos a continuar con el acto y permítanme, antes de que empecemos, comentarles brevemente tres asuntos de diversa importancia. La primera, les ruego que apaguen los móviles o los pongan en formato de silencio para evitar interrupciones. La segunda, y en nombre de Feria de Zaragoza y ANSEMAT, quiero agradecer la deferencia de los ejecutivos y de las principales firmas de maquinaria agrícola que han venido expresamente a Zaragoza para informarnos de la marcha de los mercados. Las empresas que ellos representan superan el 75% del volumen de ventas de maquinaria agrícola que se realiza en Europa. Y en tercer lugar, les informo que vamos a cambiar de idioma. Esta es una feria internacional con asistentes de muy diversos países. Para seguir las conferencias y el debate en castellano, disponen ustedes de unos auriculares que habrán recogido a la entrada y que si no les pueden facilitar. Hemos dicho que cambiábamos a inglés, que es un idioma internacional, como lo es la feria, así que lo siento mucho por los que no tengan auriculares y deseen tenerlos, es el momento de pedirlos, porque empezamos a hablar en otro idioma. Okay, this afternoon we have scheduled two conferences. Both conferences are devoted, one of them to the global monetary crisis, perspectives and potential impact on our industry, and the second one will be current business, perspectives and market trends for the European agricultural machinery industry. The first one, which deals with the global monetary crisis, perspectives, potential impact on our industry, will be lectured by Mr. Gilles Driancourt, who is the SEMA president, and at the same time he is John Deere Director of Government Affairs for Europe, Africa and Middle East. Please, Mr. Driancourt, whenever you like.
So, thank you.
Do you know how it works?
I should click on my presentation. Okay, anyway.
Let me see. Okay.
And then this one.
Okay.
Okay. Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Me llamo Gilles Driancourt, presidente de SEMA. También soy economista. Lo que me trae a la memoria la pregunta que hizo Fidel Castro tras la Revolución Cubana, cuando reunido con sus colegas, preguntó quién es economista. ¿Por qué querría alguien para llevar el Banco Central? El Che se levantó y dijo, yo mismo. Entonces Fidel le preguntó, ¿eres economista? El Che respondió, no, soy comunista. Entonces el Che se convirtió en el director del Banco Central. En mi caso, soy economista, pero no comunista. Ya que estamos en una economía libre, esperaréis que realice previsiones. Solo haré uno. No os hablaré en español porque no hablo español. Esta será la previsión más precisa que haré hoy. So let's switch to the English language. This morning when I woke up, I went to the BBC World Reports and surprisingly, that was exactly about what I'll be talking tonight, which is the financial crisis in Europe and also the market prices, the food market prices. So we hear here that it's on this side of the world that it's a European finance crisis, but it has a more broader spectrum, unfortunately. And you can see from these cartoons that perhaps Europe and the United States are exactly in the same shape, so to speak, but the cartoons are extremely close. I mean, the reason is because the European public debt is still expanding. We heard that in Brussels there were many summits for dealing with the euro crisis, and that solutions will be found. I must say, for the time being, no solution has been found. The ratio, the debt ratio is still increasing. And you can see that on the map. The figures, well, the colors are not accurate, but I put an accurate figure on the slide, which is that the current debt ratio in Europe moved from 66% of the GDP in 2007 up to about 90% most probably this year, or 89 this year and 90 next year. It's quite important to get that the 90% figure is where exactly everything starts to scratches. Because to redeem your debt, to repay your debt, you need a very strong growth. And that's really the issue for us. How could we get growth in Europe? We'll see that perhaps a little bit later on. And I'd like to give you some basic financial figures for the Eurozone, because they are not very often put together in your newspapers. So the first thing we have to consider is really the debt ratio per country. And I made a selection, because we are also talking about Mediterranean area. Italy is certainly, from a pure debt ratio, in a very bad shape. The current figure is about 120%. Of course, there is worse than Italy, because the real figure for Greece is about 169% and not 160%. That should go down, if an agreement is to be found in the coming next days, to 129, not really 120. But just after, they would borrow 145 billions. So that will go up immediately to, I don't know, 150 or something like that. Ireland is also rather in a bad shape with 118%. Portugal 108, Belgium 99, so below 99%. France 88%. Germany 81, which is an interesting figure because in these groups of countries, only Germany was able to reduce its ratio. The reason is very simple. They had growth. And they could use part of this growth and incremental tax revenue to repay their debt, while the other countries just saw their debt increasing. Spain, we heard about these so-called pigs. I don't like it very much, by way of this nickname. Spain is quite low, actually. It's only 71% of GDP. So if you compare Spain and Italy, Spain is in a much better place, because Spain could actually reduce its debt with much less effort. So for your own country, I know we have many Spaniards in this audience, there is hope. The situation is not as bad as some media would say. The interest rates, of course, is the second figure we need to look at, because, of course, if you combine the two, you have an idea of what the real financial situation is. So interest rates, 10 years, which is, let's say, the bond we use to, as, let's say, the average bond to measure the ratio. Germany is extremely low, as we know. That's the Bund, 1.7%. France is quite high, starting to be high. Belgium is 4.18, Spain is 5.3, Italy 6.5, which is extremely bad. And I would just use this example. Well, Greece doesn't count because Greece is unfortunately, from a theoretical point of view, bankrupt. But if you use Italy with 120% ratio GDP with bonds that they have to pay at 6.5, you realize that the growth you need to match, to repay your debt, is something like 7-8%. No European country will do that. So there is a real issue in Greece, despite the fact that the budget is perhaps not as bad as in France, for instance, because the state is self-sufficient. The financial situation in Italy is related to interests. So if you want to have a look at the Spanish situation, you can see that every minute I'm talking, the debt is increasing at this speed. I could use other countries, but if it's the first time you are seeing this clock, it's quite amazing. We'll see another one later on. So, but you can realize that the debt per citizen is 14,000 euros, and citizen mean also the almost dead and those who are to be born in the coming days. So we are in a situation we have to finance the public debt in huge amounts. That's really an issue for us, for our industry. I'll come to this. The interest to be paid, and only the interest, is about 240 billions for Italy. Just imagine the amount of money. It's really huge. Germany is 194. but of course the German GDP is much higher. France is 145, Spain is 70. I would say, from a gut feeling, that might be sustainable. But if you look that on a higher scale, and you look, for instance, only for EU27, the states will have to borrow 1 trillion euros just to repay their interests. And OECD will be 10 trillions on the market in 2012. That means that this money will be drained out of the private market. And that means that we'll have, or suppliers or dealers will have a hard time to find money. Because the market, most of these amounts will be paid for public debt. That will not be available for the private markets. We have to realize that. That will have an impact on our economy. Now, of course, some states are in a better shape than the others. If you look at these pictures, you can see that I think that gives another angle to consider the debt in Europe. If you take the AAA, it's fine. I mean, they have low rates, they have rather low debt ratio. But if you go to the lower level, Spain has to be for instance, be very careful to keep its at least A, because when you move to the BB quote or rating, then it really starts to be bad. You could be brought all of a sudden in a very difficult situation that the interest rates just go up and you are not able to repay your debt. And that's perhaps already the situation for Ireland and Italy. You see that Italy is very close to a speculative rating, as Cyprus is now, and Portugal also. And the report this morning in the BBC was very alarming, saying that Portugal has a very hard time and will certainly go for a second help assistance package. Greece, CC is bankrupt, so that's the situation. So in front of this very tough situation, we should not underestimate it. There is a new kind of EU monetary policy which is not orthodox at all, which is a new definition, which is certainly has been originated by Trichet in his time, but from his successor now. Basically, the ECB is trying to copy what the Fed is doing in the States. The discount rate, which is the basic rate to borrow money, went down to 1%, and it should move to 0.75%. So it means that on a 3 years period of time, that's what a bank needs to pay. And in fact, on the 23rd of December, the ECB decided to open the walls of monetary creation. And they decided to do that in such a manner that the banks could borrow as much money as they want, which is perhaps one of the first time in the monetary history. And as a matter of result, in the 2 coming days, the European banks, private banks, borrowed almost 500 billion euros, which is a huge amount of money. And they didn't put this money on the market, which was the expectation of Mario Draghi. And that didn't work. I mean, what did they do with this money, these banks? They sent it back to the European Central Bank, where they got an interest rate of 0.25%, which means that they will be losing something like 3 billion euros per year. And the reason is because there is no trust anymore between the banks, and they don't agree among themselves to recapitalize or to finance themselves, which is a big issue. There is a big confidence issue there. So they accept to lose money because they think they lose less money by keeping their liquidities at the European Central Bank than to lend that to other banks and ultimately to the industry, which was Mario Draghi's bet. And there will be a new operation of this kind mid of February. Some forecasts, I think they are overstated, say that the European Central Bank would offer 1.5 trillion euros. It's basically monetizing the debt. We are in a situation that the central bank is expecting the private bank to support the public debt through such liquidities. And also the ECB is also intervening on the markets and buying huge amounts of public debt, which is not in the spirit of the European treaties. But we don't know exactly how much. That's a real issue. But we can see that in the balance sheet of the European Central Bank. And that has increased dramatically over these last 6 months. In only 6 months, the figures moved from 1.8 trillion to 2.7 trillion. And it's about 33%, a third of the European GDP. And in comparison, if you take the Fed, the current financial status of the Fed is only 20% of the US GDP. So it means that we are in a certainly financial worse situation. And I must add that if the plan is completed in mid of February, in the coming days, the total balance sheet of the European Central Bank would reach 50% of the GDP, which is really unprecedented. And I think that's not a very sound situation. But like in life, sometimes bad things aim to good things, and the good part might be that we'll have a weaker euro. Currently, when I wrote that, it was about $1.29 for a euro. It's today 1.31, but it's the same. It's much better for industry than 1.5. I think that is for the most of the European countries that will give us some leverage and the possibility to be more flexible. It's not perhaps so for Germany, because Germany used to have a stronger currency, but I think they will deal with it. Other consequences, of course, of a weaker euro is, and that we have to be very careful of, is we'll pay the raw materials, the oil, the energy, more in euro terms, and that's something we have to think about in our strategies. So the situation is now in the US is not much better, despite the fact that the Fed didn't go so far as the bank, European Central Bank. The US public debt is the largest in the world. It's above 15 trillion US dollar, which is also unprecedented. And I'd like to click on this clock, and that should come, I hope. That's the figures. You can see all the social accounts. The good figure, well, the most important figure is the one on the top on the left side, which shows this 15 trillion. If I speak 20 seconds, during these 20 seconds, the United States will borrow $1 million every 20 seconds. It's amazing. I mean, that's not sustainable. Just imagine that all companies will live like that. We won't go very far. I mean, that's for sure. There is a big problem there. And you can see that also in the national accounts. The US budget deficit forecasted, for 2011, which is a confirmed one, is 1.4 trillion. And it will be 1.3 trillion in 2012, which is not much better. And you have to realize that the US deficit equals the GDP of Spain. So every single part of the wealth which is manufactured or put out of Spain is equaling the US budget deficit. Military spendings are very high. It's about almost 900 billion per year, which is also a huge amount of money. That's the first military budget in the world. And to sustain such a very, very difficult approach of monetary issues, the federal bank is buying the debt, which is direct monetization in this case. The rate, which has been defined by the Fed, is the lowest since 1954. It's between 0% and 0.25%. And that will last until 2014. So, and Fed is, as I stated, buying massively US Treasury bonds, much more than Japan and China together. In 2011, the Fed financed about 88% of the US deficit. That's a quantitative easing. That's printing money, basically. I'm wondering how the rotatives work, I mean, because they are certainly overheated. So the consequence will be that the dollar is structurally weaker than the euro. And that we'll have to deal with, of course. Is a weak US dollar good or bad for our industry? My first answer is it depends where you manufacture. If you manufacture in Germany, I'm not sure it's as good as in Spain, for instance, because, well, in fact, it's the opposite. In Germany, it might be quite good, but in Spain, I'm not sure, because well, it depends on which kind of product you have to compete with. And it's also depending very much on your personal situation. It depends from your products, your market, and your productivity, and where you manufacture. More global you are, more international you are, more you are able to compensate the dollar risk by mixing your monetary basket. Well, so now we went through a very dark tunnel, and you know at every end of each tunnel there is light. And fortunately, we are quite fortunate to work in our sector of activities. The perspective for us are much more optimistic, and there are many favorable tailwinds in an economy for our business. Why? Because basically we deal with agriculture. Population is still growing, people eating more and better in most of the part of the world. We can see that besides Europe's, the income still rise for consumers, especially in the developing world. That's where they consume more food, by the way. The average growth rate for the 2 coming years in the developing world will be above 6%, which is still amazing. It should be around much below 3% in the developed world. That shows where the demand will come from, of course. In 2012, 53% of the world population will live in countries with a growth rate above 6%, and 20% above 8%. And those countries are for us priority targets. The figures were a little bit better in 2011, but they should be consolidated, and it's still promising. The production also increased in those last times. There is a very strong demand for food around the world, and the farmers responded very well in 2011. The demand for food was about 200 million tons, and the farmers around the world were able to supply 2,300, which means light surplus, but in fact the stocks were depleted, and that's quite good that we could again rebuild these stocks. Prices are still very good and high. If you look at the food index, which is based on the year 2000 for 100, that went up to 240 late 2010, but it's still at 210 in 2012, which means that the prices are very good. And that will of course drive the demand. And the market, the financial experts who might be wrong, as I say, because they could not always make good predictions, but the markets anticipate that price will stay very high. If you look at the futures and the commodities index, they are very high. In 1970, it was about 100 for the future market. It's today 500. So In terms of prices, we are much better than in the 70s, and that will remain like that. Okay, it was 575 in 2008, but it was an exceptional year, and after we had the crisis. So as a matter of conclusion, I would say, despite all the threats, all the concerns we have, certainly on the financial side, 2000 should be another very good year for our business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Driancourt. I'm still trembling, I have to say. But finally I have found that there is hope, especially because of farming. Thank you very much. We hope to still continue eating every day and not paying too much, which is what we do now. Okay, our next conference will be driven by Mr. Gerd Wissendorfer. He's a VDMA market analysis statistics specialized in agricultural machinery. He will talk to us, he will explain what is going on as regards to current business, perspectives and market trends for the European agricultural machinery industry. Mr. Wissendorfer, please.
Buenas tardes, señoras y señores, y gracias por la invitación a este foro. I will talk about the market development in Europe for the agricultural machinery market, but also about the circumstances and the surrounding of the market that we are dealing with. And thank you, Mr. Driancourt, for making this link to my presentation. You already showed the fundamentals we are dealing with, and that in principle agriculture and agricultural machinery is in a more favorable condition than the whole the economy as a whole, and therefore I think we can be glad to work in this sector. So of course the investment in agricultural machinery much depends on what the farmers can get with their products, what they earn. And the agricultural income is quite positive at the moment. Here you see the EU average for over the past years, and you see it's an index. 100 stands for the index year 2005, and you see that in 2011 we are on a European level as a whole about 20% above this comparison level. So we had plus 13% per worker in 2010, and plus another increase of 6% in 2011. Of course, there are regional differences, and here you see a big agricultural country in Europe, Italy, that had a little bit different situation in the past years. The development is below average since 2005, as you can see here from the line, and only in the last year there was a slight recovery. What the statistic people in Spain also report is that the development was also below average of Europe for the past years. And you see for 2011, this is a preliminary figure coming from December last year for 2011. The forecast for 2011 at that time was more or less stable on the year before. that means no growth in agricultural income. Italy and Spain depend more than the other countries on the horticulture sector, and that may be a reason why the agricultural income has not increased in the last 2 years. Like in other countries of Europe. Also, the wine sector was quite difficult until 2010, not so much in 2011, but that's a reason why these countries are below average, and while other countries got higher incomes. Here I show you the example for Germany, where we had highly growing income in the last 2 years, plus 15% in the last year. And this comes originally from the milk, the dairy sector, and also the grains from the arable farmers that have had a good harvest. When we see Poland as an example of the new EU member states, you remember Poland entered the European Union in 2004. We see the effect of the inclusion of these countries into the concept of the agricultural policy, of the common agricultural policy of the European Union, and you see that since the entry of 2004, the income has risen very dramatically, I would say. It has more than doubled. And you see here two effects. The one is the higher subsidies the farmers get in these countries. In Romania, Hungary, it's a similar situation. But also, especially in Poland, the structural change in agriculture has been very, very sharp and very strong. And the competitiveness of the farmers in Poland on the European markets has increased. So a quite good development for the agriculture in this country as a whole, and of course also for our sales of machines to there. Mr. Druancourt already mentioned it. The commodity prices have gone up. I would like to show you the index of the commodity prices worldwide of the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO, a sub-organization of the United Nations based in Rome. Here you see the development for meat since or for the last 10 years, and you see a quite the curve is not increasing very much, but we can see a quite stable increase over the past years. So especially for beef, we had a very continuous growth over the past years. At the moment, the average price for 1 kilogram of beef in the European Union is 3.8 euros, and that's a quite good level. What this curve also includes is poultry meat, and there we have record prices at the moment. The prices never have been so high for poultry due to a high increase in demand on a worldwide level, especially in Asian countries, but also like in South America and other regions of the world. The pork price has been quite difficult in the past year, but at the moment we have again higher prices for pork. In Spain, the price for 1 kilogram of pork in average is 1.48 euros per kilogram. In Germany, it's 1.60. So Germany is the biggest producer of pork in Europe. I think Spain is on the 4th range, and therefore we have important the pork farms, the pig farms. They have quite a big impact on our agriculture as a whole, and at the moment they are better again. What's the problem for pig farms is the cost for feed that has risen quite enough. So the next curve is cereals. Here we had ups and downs. The decisions of national governments, for example, have always an impact. The last turbulences that had impact on the cereal markets is the export policy of Russia, for example. Russia is an important exporter of cereals for the world markets. And the last decisions, just to give an example, is not to put more taxes on the exports of wheat from Russia to the world markets, and that has lowered a little bit the price again. So we have ups and downs at the moment. The price levels are about 20% below the level of the year of 1 year before, but the levels are still quite good. We have 220 euros per ton as a price for wheat at the moment, and the wheat stock lasts for calculated 105 days worldwide, and in the last peak of the price, 2007-2008, as a comparison, it was 60 days only of world stock of wheat. And so you see it's quite a more relaxed situation. A different situation is for corn, for maize. These prices are quite strong, and the supply and demand is quite short. So as a consequence, more wheat and other cereals are used for feed use, and the feed consumption, the use of cereals for feed has increased by 10% in the last 5 years, for example. So you see here the demand is really there, but the trend for the next year, for the next half year, is still not clear, because now we have the weather situation in Europe, for example, with quite low temperature, and we have to see what damages the frost has caused on our fields. Dairy products is also a very interesting market at the moment. You see, we are here at the price levels almost on the height of 2007-2008 again. And the dairy market is a very interesting market on a worldwide level. We will need, according to research institutes for the dairy sectors, we will need in 2020 until 2025 200 million tons in addition of milk production compared to now. That's more than the annual production that we have in Europe, and for example 2.5 times the production volume of the US production. So this increasing demand will help us on the market, and will help that the dairy prices in the long run will remain quite attractive. So to give you an example, one Chinese person per capita and per year at the moment consumes 28 kilograms milk or milk products per year, and in Europe the average is between 200 and 300 kilograms. So a 10% milk consumption per capita in China, and if this only increases by some kilograms in the next years, and if you consider 1.3 billion of people there, then you can imagine that there is much development ahead. And very high prices at the moment for sugar, and of course sugar is mainly produced regarding the world market in India and Brazil, but also in Europe it has a positive effect at the moment. So that was an introduction about the conditions of farming, and now I would switch over to the agricultural machinery markets, and here you see the production development for agricultural machinery in the world over the past years. In 2011, you can see with 80 billion euro, we had a new record level after 2 lower years before when we started into a recession in 2009. The recovery was quite strong again, and we calculate after this plus 15, plus 20% in the past year, we calculate with another lower increase, but an increase for 2012, again based on these favorable conditions we see at the moment. Where does the production of agricultural machinery takes place in the world? You see the biggest portion of the cake is still in the European Union, with about 1/3 of global production taking part here. The biggest producer in Europe is Germany, followed by Italy. The German production alone in 2011 was about 7 billion. European production 26 billion, and the production volume in 2011 in Europe has grown by about 19%. But I would also like to draw your attention to China. You see the third part of the column with a share of 16% for 2011 and 16% also for 2012 is reserved for China, and here we had a very tremendous development in the last year. We have examined the Chinese market in the last year quite in a detailed way, and there was an astonishing dynamics that appeared to us when we had a look at the different players there. The Chinese, you know, the Chinese GDP growth over the past years always was like 9–10% per year, but the growth for the production of agricultural machinery was much higher, about 20%. That means double the value of the total economy, and these companies and brands also appear on our markets. It's not only a production for Africa, they have global strategies and they want to cover different segments in different regions of the world. So I already mentioned the development in Germany, and as I said, Germany is the biggest production site of agricultural machinery in Europe, with main focus on tractors and harvesting equipment. And you see in 2011 we had a very strong growth by 27% to 7 billion euro, and we expect another 5% plus in 2012. This is a quite cautious forecast at the moment. The order intake, the order levels of the German manufacturers at the moment are about 25% below, above the previous year. So we have a very strong start in the year. The production in the first half of 2011 will certainly increase by 10 to 15%, but we have to be cautious for the second half of the year, and therefore a little bit lower forecast for the whole year 2012. What is happening in Germany is happening in other countries of Europe as well. I already said Italy is the second biggest production site of agricultural machinery in Europe, and you see the optimism is very high also there. 40% of the Italian manufacturers say our turnover will grow in the next 6 months. 35% say it will remain on the level we are, but also 25% of the manufacturers in Italy say, no, I think the turnover will decrease in the next 6 months. So you see quite similar evaluation of the situation in Italy and Spain, and more optimism in Germany, and also some more optimism in UK and France. But this is another split of the survey results. We do this on a monthly basis for our European Association, CEMA. What I would like to show here is that optimistic view for Europe as a whole is valid for all the sectors. Most 2/3 of the companies engaged in livestock equipment, they expect their turnover to grow in the next 6 months. And what is very important here is the component manufacturers. They are still very much expensive, and we suppose that the component manufacturers are the ones who are always a little bit ahead of the OEMs, because the OEMs, they ask for parts of the components, and if the component manufacturers, they have full order books, then of course the OEMs will follow with these turnover increases. So this is a quite positive sign still, and gives us a longer term trend on the markets and on the production for the whole sector. Lawn, garden, municipal equipment, a little bit more cautious, because here we have the dependence on the public financial resources, because here you have the state and the municipalities as a buyer of these machines, and there it might be a little bit more difficult in some European countries at the moment. But in general, when we see these expectations, these positive expectations at the beginning of this year, we can say that about more than 50% of the manufacturers here shown on the left-hand side evaluate their situation as good or very good indeed, and almost half of them say our turnover grows in the next 6 months. When we translate these two questions in one chart showing the economic cycle of our branch, you see here the last values are in the boom phase, and we are quite well established in the boom situation at the moment. Our whole sector is still in the boom situation. That means more people are very satisfied with their situation than dissatisfied, and more people expect growth instead of a decrease for the next 6 months. This is the definition of the boom situation. There are some regional differences, of course, as you can imagine, and here you see clearly the average is 45% of the manufacturers that say we have a good or a very good situation. You see for Germany, for example, this part of the company is more than 80%, but you see on the other hand also Spain and Italy, less than 20% of the manufacturers say our situation is good or very good. So we have unfortunately a regional split for the evaluation of the current situation, and but this reflects the market situation that we have currently, and of course for all the manufacturers the domestic market has a special weight for their business, and therefore the orders coming from the domestic market are decisive for the whole company. So what was the market development in the past 3 years within Europe? Here you see on the top European Union of the 27 countries. We estimate 2011 that the European market for agricultural machinery has grown by 17%. The final figures will be ready in March or April, after 2 years of a decrease. And you see here from the top to down, it's the order is according to the size of the markets. Germany is the biggest market with 5 billion euros of volume for agricultural machinery in 2011, and a growth by almost 30%. That's a record level. The German market has never been so high like last year. Also, France had a very good development in 2011. The French market recovered a little bit later than the German market after the crisis 2009. But you see also a very clear growth on the French market, and you see Italy rather stagnating. And for the Spanish market, we do not have the final calculation yet, but we suppose that the market had more or less remained on the level of the year before. So the development is quite different, and so is the forecast also for 2012. We are quite optimistic for some markets, and for other markets there is some cautious trends. I would like to show you here the development over the past years for selected markets within Europe. You see the black line on the top stands for Poland. The Polish market has become quite important within Europe. We calculate the Polish market for 2011 to have a volume of 1.2 billion euros. Therefore, with this value, it stands on the 6th or 7th position. I don't know exactly at the moment, but it's a quite high ranking of the Polish market in the meantime. Germany is the biggest market with, as I mentioned, 5 billion euro, and you see here when you see the index calculation for the past years that the increase was over average of the European Union. Second biggest market is France. We calculate the market for 2011 with 4.3 billion euros. And you see a quite weaker development for Spain, stagnating in the past 3 years on a quite low level with about 880 million euros and ranking on position 8 in the European Union. So I come back to our survey that we make on every month for the different markets. Here you see positive and negative values. Positive means that the majority expects a market increase in the next half year, and you see Spain and Italy have come in slightly negative trends for the past month, and so this means that more people expect the market to decrease in the next month than to increase, while the others are still in the positive range. I would like to show you also the results of the tractor markets for the Western European region. This is 13 Western European countries. As a whole, you see the 2011 figures, they are not available for all the countries, but we expect the market to have grown by 5% approximately to 150,000 units. France is the biggest market, but including also telescopic handlers and everything. So it's not comparable to Germany, for example, the figure, but it's a very high growth by more than 20% in 2011, followed by 26% plus in Germany. And you see Italy stagnating and Spain minus 5% and only 10,000 units left on the Spanish market. I think there is much potential, and having earned quite good money, some sectors here, for example, with a good harvest 2011, there should be more room for expansion and for growth again, also for the Spanish market. And then I would, coming back to tractors, the signs of January are very positive. We had a growth in Germany by 18%, in France by 25% in January, and in UK by 22%, so a really good start in 2012, also already that in a statistical sense. So for Europe as a whole, the market has grown quite considerably in 2011, as I already mentioned, and we expect the market to grow in 2012, again reaching approximately the record level of 2008. So to summarize my comments and analysis on the European agricultural machinery market, we have quite good conditions at the moment still for the third year in a row now on for the European agriculture as a whole. Higher income, still good commodity prices, as I mentioned, and of course there is the agricultural policy that has a quite high impact on the agricultural investment, as it stands for between 1/3 and half of the earnings of the farmers. They may cause some disturbance, but for example in Germany the discussion is not so much in the farming sector. It's in the lobby organizations at the moment, but I heard, for example, in France that the discussions are also affecting also the farming sector already about the uncertainties what will happen after 2013. The agricultural machinery market was more dynamic than we had expected at the beginning of last year, so there were quite positive surprises. Germany and France as the two main markets and the two biggest markets are still a strong engine for the whole European agricultural machinery market, and we will see a growth of the market in many of the countries, perhaps not in Italy, probably or hopefully in Spain again in the first half of 2012. we have big potential in the markets where we have grown very much in the past years. That's Central Europe, like Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, but also Russia, Ukraine, the very big markets. They still have huge potential to be exploited, and that's where our companies are very active and will remain very active in 2012 again. Credit access for dealers, but also for end users, is a problem in some countries, especially in the southern European countries. That's also a result of our survey we made in like 3-4 months ago, where many said yes, the access to credit and to financial resources has become more difficult. But here I think we have again like a split between the northern countries and the southern countries at the moment. But to conclude all these impact factors, the production 2012 can be expanded again after the strong increase in 2011. We expect another increase, not like 2011 in percentage rate, but certainly around 5 to 10%. And there are, for Europe as a whole spoken, no signs of recession at the moment, as we are in a quite beneficial surrounding. The commodity prices are the most decisive factors, and the harvest expectations will be now the next factor that we have to look at. Of course, we hope for a good harvest again in 2012, but anyhow, the farmers will work on the fields and see what they can harvest and to what prices they sell. At the moment, it's quite beneficial, and I think we can be very optimistic for 2012. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wissendorfer. I think it has been a very clarifying speech. And then now we know that there is room for improvement, at least locally, as we see that in some other countries which are surrounding us, especially in Central Europe and even Southern Europe as well, the agricultural machinery markets are growing up. As in this case, Mr. Dragancourt was telling us before, farming is big business, and we are there to supply the machinery. Now, in order to have a discussion on these items, we have invited from the main brands of agricultural machinery executives in order to inform us about the situation in different markets, especially focused on the Mediterranean countries, which some of our producers, some of our agricultural manufacturers are addressing. So I'm going to invite to come to us to Mr. Hubertus Mühlhauser, who is Senior Vice President and General Manager AGCO, to join us. Mr. Jan-Hendrik Moore, President of Class Global Sales. Mr. Franco Attoni, Sales Marketing After Sales Executive Global Director. Mr. Carlo Lambro, New Holland Vice President of Sales Europe. Mr. Jürgen Dicker, Export Area Sales Manager for South America, UK, Spain and Portugal, from Kuhn to join us. Mr. Wissendorfer, should be somewhere? Okay, thank you so much. And now we are going to start the discussion on different items related to the agricultural machinery markets. And then in order to follow a certain pattern, we have already settled certain questions in order to start the discussion. But I would like to, those of you who are interested in setting up other questions, please raise up your hand and someone will help you to address the questions to our people in the panel. So we start now the discussion as such. Excuse me just half a minute. Thank you. Okay, first question we have is related to manufacturing in Europe. The question which we have prepared will be addressed to Mr. Mühlhauser. And then the question is the following. Bearing in mind the short amount of series in production and the wide offer of models and specs, do you think that pressure from authorities is too strong, too high, especially when considering the high amount of demands required for an engine introduction or for any homologation of machines? Would you say it is a real burden for industry?
Is it now working? Primero, muchas gracias para invitarme de estar acá, pero voy a hablar en inglés, por supuesto. Well, it's a nice question, of course, if you ask a manufacturer whether he thinks that regulation is too high, and you would expect that that the answer is yes, it is too high, you have to lower. But I think we would see that fairly differently in ECHO. The burden that is put because of emission legislation on the manufacturers is significant, and we have to pay a lot of money up front. We have to make the investments, and our clients have to pay for that, because that's then ultimately put on the product as an extra cost, and that then also goes then in the production cost of the food, so food will basically become more expensive. But I think the real question should be, do we have a choice? And we at ECHO believe that we do not have a choice. So we think we need that regulation, and we need it because we need to make agricultural in an environmentally sustainable way. The second part of the question is a little bit, does homologation need to increase? And I would say what we need on the emission side and the emission legislations where we think this is good, we would say for the homologation side when it comes to noise and some other safety restrictions there, perhaps it's a little bit overdone. So to answer the question, I think we should observe that legislation that is put upon us by the EU, but also by the US or other countries, is really related and focused and targeted that we make agricultural and environmentally sustainable way. And emissions is only one part of it. I think what is not yet regulated, but this is something that should come, is the consumption of water. Drop per crop, I think you know that. There are not yet a lot of regulations, and to be very honest, it is in all our interest that governments, specifically when we go into large-scale industrial farming, is looking that precision farming is applied and that we basically have a responsible use of water when we do farming. So this is kind of the answer, the lengthy answer to your short question.
I was not expecting to comment your own comment, but it's very interesting, and I share your views. I must say that's at CIMA our cup of tea. I mean, that's the very reason of our organization is, of course, to be represented to the European institutions and to really take care that we will not be harmed in a way that that would become a hindrance for our own business. But do we have a choice? Of course, we don't have a choice most of the time, because that's a social demand which is reflected into politics. But what we should ask, and I think that will be a policy line, it's a better timing on all these regulations, because sometimes they collide together. And you took the example of emissions regulations and directive. But when it comes together, with, for instance, the so-called mother regulation for tractors and other safety aspects, all of a sudden you add many costs to our production, which are passed on the farmers, while in the rest of the world they don't have these burdens. Yeah. And of course, that creates a kind of very difficult competitive situation for our industry, and we have really to think about it. And I think we have to carry and to voice a very strong message towards the institutions. In the past, we have been rather shy on this. I think we need to change our approach and to be much stronger, not to say we don't want any regulation, but we need a better timing and also better impact assessments on this regulation.
Yeah, if you allow me a comment there, I think this is what I said. I think we need to be very strict on the priorities. And I guess that we all agree that the EU does not have the priorities right. But we at ACCO would not compromise on the environmental priorities. And when it comes to emissions, I think we've been the first ones to introduce the cleanest engine in our industry, SCR, selective catalytic reduction engines with ACCO CISO power. And we did this on purpose, and we did this even before the time when it was needed. And what you will hear from us, ACCO, is that we're going to push that. And if you listen to me, I said there are other areas, such as homologation when it comes to noise. I think these are lesser priorities that we for sure can put on a back burner. But emission regulation, we're going to be very, pushing for that, because I think this is absolutely needed, and we have to do it as corporate responsible managers.
Yeah, you would not have to push for it. That will come automatically. But I must say we have the same feeling with Deere. It's an interesting competitors discussion now. We also provide the cleanest engines, of course. But let's come back to the European level. And my idea is really one of the priorities I propose to the board of directors is that we launch this year a study on the impact of all these EU regulations on our production cost. I think that will give us a table and means really to measure what the costs were. And if you think about the emissions, especially, that has triggered huge costs of research and development, which could have perhaps better split it for other applications. That's only the thing I do. Of course, we won't.
We won't solve it now, I guess. But
okay. And about water consumption, of course, you might be aware that there will be a big reform next year, which is called Blueprint, and we are currently working on it. Of course, the European Union does not have the power to fix the prices, but they will create indicators and criteria for better management. Of course, the companies which provide these services to their clients will be much better off. That's the only remarks. But I would like to say to the audience that CIMA, and I'm thinking of CIMA today, is really at the core of all the discussions in Brussels, and if you have any expectations, please come back to me and us, and we'll try to convey the message to the European Union. Thank you very much.
I would just add a comment as an implement manufacturer. I cannot talk about emissions and these things, but as a, let's say, mid-size implement manufacturer, we are very often concerned about differences in national homologations and national restrictions, which cause a lot of problems to us in order to have the right answer to these. And we need and we are asking for more common regulations already, even inside Europe, but also on a worldwide level.
And if you were an equipment manufacturer in the United States, you even have within one country EPA and CARB, and you could not manage what that does. That's something, EPA is in Washington, so if you have an approved engine for the most of the territory of the United States, you have California CARB, and they put other regulations on it. And I think we agree on that. Transparency and similarities would help tremendously. Yeah.
Let me be a bit aggressive in this respect. If we set up a special number of regulations, especially for implements and some small machines, we're not throwing away from the market medium and small firms. I was going to put that question up to you later on, but I think now it could be the time.
Well, yeah, this is one of the questions, and I think you are asking why is consolidation happening. because smaller firms usually disappear, eaten up by bigger firms, and larger firms grow. And that's the consolidation that's happening in our industry. It's happening for the manufacturers, and it's also happening for our dealers. And I think one element of that, of course, is legislation and the higher costs that you have, because I mean, to meet Tier 4 final standards, you have to invest hundreds of millions into your machinery, and that's something that smaller firms can't do. So that's one driver of consolidation, but not the only one. I think the largest driver is globalization. We are in a global industry, and in order to serve these markets, you have to be globally present. Take Southern Europe, take the majority of the tractors below 100 horsepower. Very few of those in 10 years will be really produced in Southern Europe. You got to be in Asia, and the Asians are already here. So as a company, you need to have a certain size to have a global footprint, to be at the comparative optimum point of production. There will be great manufacturing here in Europe for higher horsepower tractors or for more complex harvesting equipment, but you need to play the world markets and also the world manufacturing markets, and for that reason you have to be a larger company. So I think that is really driving the consolidation, less so the regulations.
Thank you. We have following questions, and that I would address it to Mr. Moore from class, and it's related to the following. How do you manage to introduce sophisticated specs in agricultural machines which have to be sold in markets which are highly sensible to prices? Is that a bit of a burden for customers? For instance, we are talking about areas where especially the financial crisis is hitting a bit harder.
Yeah. Buenos dias, also from my side. Buenos dias, also from my side. And first of all, I have to say I'm a son of a farmer and I believe in farming. And second of all, I'm an engineer and I also believe in technology development. And that is what I did 27 years at class prior to becoming a salesman. And for example, just to give you a number, combines are growing in size by about 3% annually. And not only that, it's also that nowadays a combine enjoys a computer, has got GPS steering, at least, recommends settings to the driver due to all kinds of sensors and so forth in it. So there's technology development anyhow, and I guess it's absolutely no question that it continues. At class, we are serving markets like the European markets, of course, with Lexion combines, but also have combines which we develop and produce in India, for example. There's a huge span of technology, and I think the best answer is that you have fitting technology for the markets you are serving. But coming back to the point with high tech, how do you do that? In general, all markets basically along that growth in size class, along the growth in technology, play into our hands, kind of, if you are a manufacturer of high-tech machines anyhow. There's a general tendency, and then there's good reasons for it, because farming itself is changing, farm size is growing. I think all over the world, basically in the developed countries, many young kids are moving into the big cities and not staying out in the countryside. So also there you need bigger machines and maybe less machines because you just don't have the operators available. And that probably drives more professionalism at the very end of the day of farms. And contractors might be there who do part of the job. So all overall, I think it's a hen and egg kind of question. And higher tech will be a theme, is also the theme of this fair here in Zaragoza.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Artoni, Franco Artoni, Sales Marketing After Sales Executive Global Director, SDF, Summit Farm Group. The question is, sustainable farming in the European Union is based on technology development. Do you think that current farmers are giving a positive answer to electronics and to new machines provided with new communication protocols, for instance, ISO-bus?
It's a very long name. Sorry for that. Bienvenidos todos. Buenas tardes. Sustainable agriculture. It's something that becomes more and more important every single day. What does it mean? It means few words about what the meaning is. To provide food enough to the people in the world. And we heard before from your presentation that we are growing. We're going to move from 7 billion to 9 billion of people in some years' time. And these people, they deserve food. Also, we have to know that 800 million of people every day, they don't have enough food to survive in a decent way. Sustainable agriculture means respect of the man and of the environment. So we have to use less chemical products as possible. And we have to reduce excessive soil treatment, as we did not in a proper way in the past. Business efficiency, that's very important. To provide more, to have a higher productivity in the countries, and to provide better return on investment to the farmers. That means also to improve the day-after-day life of the farmers. We have to make sure that the farmers, they earn more money, enough money to live in a better way. And also means a more rational use of the resources available in the world. Not second to this, we have also to say that the new CAP in 2013 will push more and more towards this direction, and will provide maybe more financing support to those countries that are more keen to develop sustainable agriculture. Then the question asks, what about electronic and what about ISO-bus? When I started my career in agricultural business some months ago, or years ago, then it was late the 80s, and I remember the first tractors with that electronic were released into the market, and many people were criticizing the decision taken by some global players because they simply said they're going to be too much expensive for the farmers. They will never buy this. There will be too much complexity with the electronic, and the farmer will never understand this complexity. It simply will not work. That was some years ago. I believe today nobody in the world can question about electronic in tractors and implements as well. There is a lot of electronics, and electronics is helping very much the direction towards sustainable agriculture. About ISO-bus is a great opportunity to implement sustainable agriculture even further. There was a discussion between tractor manufacturers and implements manufacturers in the 90s, and we all came to a conclusion that would have been a good idea to have something that would connect implements and tractors together in a very simple and easy way. We are going towards a plug-and-play solution. Maybe we have already a plug-and-play solution. With ISO-bus, we can program ahead the activities, so we can plan before what to do. We can do a good mapping of the quantity of the fertilizer we can use. We can schedule automatic solution and activities. We can analyze yield production after the work. This is very, very important, because when we do mistakes, if we analyze the mistakes, we can do it better in the future. And then, of course, we can, with this solution, we can improve the profitability of the farmers, because they do it faster, easier, and in a better way. So then, yes, ISO-bus and technology is helping very much sustainable agriculture. And then you ask in the question, is everybody accepting this in the world? Are all the farmers going to accept this and utilize electronic? And my simple answer is yes. They will, it's a matter of time. Maybe there are different speed in the accepting these electronic in the tractors and in the implements. For example, we have seen in the last 2 years the two speeds of the agricultural economy in the southern part of Europe and the northern part of Europe. In Germany or Holland or Denmark, they simply look to the most technological machines to buy because their earning was very, very positive. While in the Mediterranean area, we have seen a big increase of very simple and mechanical implements and tractors sold because the farmers are struggling with their income. But each one of these farmers, and particularly the professional farmers, will have to face with technology and with electronic in the future.
Any other additional comments? Okay, we pass then to the next one, which we will address. Next question we'll address to Mr. Carlo Lambro, New Holland Vice President of Sales Europe. Question is, currently we are undergoing through a crisis period. What recommendations would you address to Mediterranean ag machine manufacturers to successfully fulfill their target markets?
Hola, buenas tardes. I would rephrase your question, because what we have seen so far is not a crisis period. No? We have seen good numbers, good figures everywhere. I think that all the companies last year almost booked profits out of the expectation. So I think that, if I well understand the question, is more linked to the manufacturer that they have production based in the Mediterranean area. And if I see the footprint of the big producer, you are considering mainly Italy and Turkey. These are the main two areas of manufacturing business. Of course, we as CNH and as New Holland, we have just addressed this issue with two specific actions. One, Mr. Muhammad just said, is a globalization. So I think that to be a big player, you cannot count on the market anymore, on the domestic market. You have to be look globally, that's clear. And I think that is valid for all the big countries. So globalization is the first aspect. As also we said from GS, also to address the currency devaluation or evaluation. If you are more global, you can better position yourself. So I think that it's clear, globalization. And then of course you can tailor your production footprint according product size, market, or niche market, or category market, I would say. The second one is specialization, and is more linked to the Mediterranean area. Of course, we have seen figures related to the price of commodities, where we always seen milk, crops going very, very good, very up, meat, growing demand from Asia, India, this area. But of course, the products that are more linked to the Mediterranean area, for sure, are suffering. I remember we were here 2 years ago, in 2010, for the Medwins, and if we look more or less the business size and the business opportunity that we discussed 2 years ago, more or less, unfortunately, today are at the same level, or even lower. Because I think that the crisis, and I come back to your question, that is affecting the Mediterranean area, should be interpreted and understand if it's a structural crisis of this type of economy, and I would say of farming practice, or is linked to financial crisis of the market, or is different. Of course, if you want to be here, you have not only to provide products, of course services, finance is the key, and again specialization. We make just an example what we did in New Holland with our broad. We move the specialization on the broad harvesting machine, not move, let's say we swap from grapes also to olive, and this is giving good results. So even in a difficult environment, we are growing this business. But of course, it's a niche business. It's a business that you cannot afford to be sustainable alone. You have to have a larger scale as we are moving. So again, just to answer, to go back, globalization and specialization, I think are the two key factors to leverage and to absorb crisis that you can have if you are only concentrating on this market. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone wants to add any comment? carry on to next question in that case. Okay, next question will be dealing with the CAP, with the Common Agricultural Policy. And then that question will be addressed to Mr. Wiesenhofer. The question is, what kind of general change can we expect as regards to the diminishing of the CAP budget after 2013? What can we do about that, especially because we think that we are going to have rough times, is that right?
I don't know if rough times, and of course I'm not a representative of the Commission and cannot give any forecast for this. But I look at the discussions and in what direction they go to. First, when we speculate about the distribution of the money, we have to wait what the amount of money will be that can be distributed between 2014 and 2020. So this is still not clear, although officially there all say, well, it will be at about the same level as it is now. This will have to be seen, and the negotiations about the budget for the Commission as a whole, they just start. So, and after that, we can speculate about the amount of money that is left for agricultural policy. But I think that, or let's assume that the decrease of the budget will not be very much. And I think there will be evidently a redistribution of the direct payments from the west to the eastern part of the European Union. When you see that we have a direct payment average of 80 euros per hectare in the Baltic states and about 350 euros per hectare in Germany, for example, of course there is some pressure that there will be a shift towards the east. This will happen. This will mean at the moment for the Western or the former European Union of the 15 countries that they will lose, according to estimates, about 5% of their direct payment amount. That is not too much, and therefore I think the disturbance in our Western European markets will, from that point of view, not be too big. That's what we can hope at the moment. The second is the distribution between the sectors within the countries, and of course here we are currently in the stage like France or also in Spain, that we have a shift also towards, or before 2013, towards a regional premium, regional direct payments, and not based on historic levels that still were that still worked until now. So we have some sectoral shift towards grassland, the grassland sector. There will be higher payments for grassland than now. They will be the same for grassland and for arable land. So this sector will benefit. And there is much discussion, especially in Germany, about the two items, greening, that is the big word now for the new agricultural policy. Mr. Mühlhauser and the others already explained how we do green farming already. So what the policy is doing now is they include the effects of the green farming that we have already, they include in the regime of the budget and of the payments. That's okay, but it will be much more bureaucracy for the farmers. And the second thing is the cutting of payments. The big farms above 200,000 euros of subsidies, they will have less money per hectare paid. There will be some cuts in certain stages. This, of course, will affect the big farms, but we suppose that the big farms, they have higher economies of scales with their farmings, and they should be less dependent on subsidy payments. So I think also in this sector, hopefully there will not be too much disturbance from the introduction of the new rules. I think the negotiations, they will end only mid next year or in autumn of next year, before entering into force in 2014. There will be much to negotiate still, but I don't see that there will be too much disturbance for the agricultural machinery demand like we had, for example, in the beginning of the 90s with the McSherry reform. We are already in the stage that our farmers are competitive on the market. They count and calculate with world market prices. Perhaps not the very small farms and not in all countries the same, but that's the trend and the circumstances and the conditions our farmers work with. So that's an indication that the dependence on the subsidies is always getting less, and that's a good thing also for our sector, because the world prices are high and the farmers, they can be competitive on the world market.
Thank you. Deepening into this question, I would ask Mr. Driancourt, as he is CIMA President, what kind of impact can we expect from the CAP 2013 as regards to farming in the Mediterranean countries?
I think it's working now. Well, Gerd almost responded to the question, but I try to refine a little bit his approach. A little bit by chance, I was associated in all these discussions. The fact is that I know some parliamentarians at the European Parliament dealing directly with the subject, and also a little bit also I met recently with Cholos in Bucharest, and I think, of course, it's still a draft, but we are not far from a compromise. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the whole discussion, the Commission's proposal was very far from the Parliament's proposal, but now the Parliament is, of course, associated to the CAP reform, which is something new in the dynamics, in the political dynamics. And my contacts in the Parliament always told me we'll have a very strong say, and in fact, I must say, they were right, because we are every day closer to the European Parliament's view. So, and Cholos took that into account, and the proposal which has been issued some weeks ago is very close to the Parliament's views. So the reform as yet sketched will likely be something like that. The only big question mark is, of course, member states and the kind of agreement we could find between France, Germany, and other states. But so, what can we derive from the main, from the headlines of this reform? I think there will be no drastic change in terms of direct payments, with one caveat a little bit later. The idea is to keep the nominal value through the years. So, in fact, the direct payment will erode through inflation. If inflation is not too high, I mean, that will be sustainable for farmers. About redistribution, meanwhile, there will be some losers and winners in the Mediterranean area. There is, if you look at the figures, the average and so forth, there is a split. The winners, in my view, will be Portugal and Spain, because they are below. And so there you should, I think that for the Spanish and Portuguese farmers, the situation will remain as it is today, because they will not suffer too much from the inflation. So they might expect the same kind of payments they had in the past. I don't know if it could have any impact on the land price. It could be, by the way. It might be that the land price will slightly go up, because, of course, the land price depends on the subsidies you get. The losers, the big losers, will be Cyprus, Italy, and Malta. They will get much less, and I think that that has to be managed there. I do not forget that I am from the Mediterranean shores of France, so France is an ambiguous country in this respect, because we have both on Atlantic and Mediterranean seas. But France will also lose. That's according to the current scheme, and of course that will be reflected ultimately in the machinery demand. The big question mark is about green payments, and the fact that part of the direct payments will be linked to environmental practices. There it's still very fuzzy. We don't know exactly what will be put in this basket, the criteria which might be used. I would tend to think that in very dry countries like Spain, south of Italy, and so perhaps south of Portugal, there might be a big issue for some of the farmers, because there will be much more controls, and that will come also from this blueprint reform we were talking about a while ago. There might be an issue. I mean, I don't know if they will manage their traditional practices with this greening of the direct payments. Other main drivers will be, for instance, that due to this greening, there will be more focus on traceability, soil erosions, things like that, which drive for more precision farming. Of course, the demand might go up in this direction. There is also the clear intent to dismantle all the meat quotas. I think that for the Mediterranean countries it's not so relevant, because the livestock is already quite low, so it's not in the traditional production like in the Nordic countries. So should not be too bad. There will be some incentives, surprisingly, to develop what they call the school fruit. So that the youngsters will eat more fruits than any hamburgers, green and yellow, or other kind of, well, not so green and yellow, that's a lapsus, red and yellow, but they became green recently. And the fruit production should be supported by several means. The capping, you mentioned, above 235,000 euros. It's after labor costs. Difficult to say what would be the impact in the Mediterranean countries, because there are still many families production, very traditional production. I don't think they will be impacted. Another dimension will be the mandatory crop diversification. The farmers will have to crop 3 different types of crops. Also, I don't think it's a very big issue in the Mediterranean countries, because there is somewhere olive trees, vineyards, and so forth. I mean, that's a much diversified production than in other countries, like I don't know, in the Beauce in France, or some parts of Germany. So that should not be a big issue too. The set-aside part of it might be for some. You have to keep kind of gray area and environmental protection. It's about 7% of your land, which is quite high, but I was attending meetings and partly negotiating on this. The Commission is ready to make concessions. and they will include everything in this 7% set aside, which might have an impact of all amounts of production. They will include, for instance, hedges, trees, private gardens, ditches, ponds, and so forth, and at the end that might not be good change. So in a nutshell, I think that especially for Portugal and Spain, not much change, not much drivers. I would be curious to see what would be the situation in Cyprus and Malta, but that's small islands, but more precisely in Italy, where we could see SWIFT, which are presently not expected. That's my whole comment.
Thank you. Okay, I understand that situation will not affect to these countries, but in the case of someone manufacturing mainly implements like Kuhn, would you think, Mr. Dicker, that the machinery demands in these European countries will remain as it is now, will come up, come down?
The question is not easy to answer. Both Mr. Wiesendorfer and Mr. Drianco, they already gave a lot of information, and they are much more closer to this than me. Mr. Wiesendorfer is handling figures and statistics, and Mr. Drianco has his ear much more closer to the European Commission and institutions than me. So I give the answer as someone who is looking from outside and having information only from what is published, what is in discussion. But I agree fully with Mr. Wiesendorfer that there will be still some time before we have the final project, the final decision, and also before we know what is the final budget. So it's quite difficult. I agree that we will not have drastically changes in the machinery demand. There will certainly be regional differences. There will be country, as far as the direct payments are concerned, there will be winners, others will lose. Italy, for example, with very high direct payments actually will certainly be lower. Spain and Portugal will be winners. But what effect it will have? Will the demand of machines change to other type of machines, or will just the size of machines change? It's very hard to predict. We think, anyhow, with CAP or without CAP, the restructuration generally seen of farming will continue. We will have more specialization, and small and mid-sized farms will have a higher pressure on cost effectiveness, so we will certainly have more common use of machines. This means bigger machines, higher horsepower tractors. So the trends we have today will continue. Some countries, if we talk about greening or higher demands on environmental respect and more sustainable farmings, maybe we will have in some countries a higher demand, for example, in sprayers, in plant protection machines, which use with higher precision the chemicals, which use less water, for example. So this, I can imagine, we will see in countries like Spain or Italy. Anyhow, it has also been said before that the world population is growing, and we have to assure, the farming has to assure that we have enough food for these for the men, and for this reason, I would not say the CAP will drastically change the needs of machines. We will have in some spots differences. We will have maybe also higher specs on the machines, but on these aspects we are already working today.
Thank you. We would like to deal with some items, some questions on Mediterranean countries. I would like that probably answers would be shorter, but we will have some more intervention. So, in order to be a bit quicker and to make it more smoothly. Next question would be whether the influence of the eastern countries' demands has any effect in southern countries, especially as regards to attendance of, say, machinery. Did you find any items related to this question? Because some of the dealers are questioning whether before there were a certain delivery time and now it has been at times make it longer. Is that right, or what would you say?
So, first of all, it sounds like a fear that now some players forget about the southern hemisphere of Europe. And maybe in that regard, I give you the full picture. So if some of us now are active in Central and East Europe after the Iron Curtain did fall down, what I think everybody of us is appreciating, and some are acting global, then even you might have a bigger fear. What probably nobody forgets is where you come from and where you have roots and where you still have good business. And that includes the Mediterranean countries here. So I think that should be a message that at least Klaas and I guess everybody here, and that is why we have this big fair in Zaragoza, and that is why also we have a top participation here. We count on the southern hemisphere of Europe, and we have interest in it. If then you go to the supply side, for example, so beside factories or whatever you might put in place in other parts of the world, like in Russia or India or I don't know where, of course, still many of us have focus in Europe as well and continue to invest in modernization of plants and also in expansions of capacity and so forth. So from my point of view, there is no fear necessary that now manufacturers would not be able to provide machines, maybe even coming from a global network, to countries in South Europe. I think always will be possible. And also on the R&D side, if I did walk the fair today, every company basically is contributing special machines or special features for the southern hemisphere as well. So there is continued focus and continued interest and continued future. And Klaas, for example, we just opened a year ago a new sales, service, parts, marketing facility in Madrid. So there's also investments right away, even here in Spain as well. So think positive would be my proposal.
Okay, we've talked about machinery and whether deliveries could be affected, but we could be focusing the whole thing in the whole question now in southern Mediterranean countries, and the question would be again for the president of CIMA. How could you see now after the crisis that some of the northern African countries around the Mediterranean are going through? Do you envisage any problems as regards to those markets? You find that the situation will be encouraging short? Are you thinking that maybe some problems could affect those agricultural markets or machinery markets?
Well, I'll answer partly to your question because, in fact, I focus more on the original question I had, which is about really all Mediterranean area in Europe. Well, it seems to be, from what I know, very theoretically, because I have never been on the field in this matter, is that if you think about Spain, there is a trend, a certain trend to shift the production from Spain to Algeria and Morocco, and which is driven by major investors. Of course, the labor cost is quite low, and that's appealing, and they have also less land restrictions. So there is a trend, especially coming from Spain, much less from other Mediterranean countries. But the issue is that these countries are extremely unstable for the time being. the so-called Arab Spring is still spreading. Libya is not stable at all. We don't know exactly who is ruling the country. There is some trends towards more fundamentalism, and so therefore it's very balanced and very mixed for the investors. They try to secure some investments, but of course they do not master the political conditions.
We would see that a little bit more positive, perhaps, if I may add to that. Take the case of Libya. We have since, I don't know, 30 or 40 years, a manufacturing joint venture, Libya Tractor Works, which because of Gaddafi was dormant. We could not go in there. But now with the new regime and with democracy happening, and true that not everything is clear yet, but our appetite for investments and to go into these areas because of the revolution that has happened in all of these countries is a lot better. So I would be very positive for that. And if you take Algeria, we are selling today already through our partner Sampo 500 combines every year in Algeria. I think these are very, very interesting markets.
Well, just to make my own thoughts clearer, I was not mentioning about manufacturing. I was more referring in this case purchasing of land, which is something different. But I like to come back to Mediterranean area. I mean the Mediterranean countries of the EU. I think the drivers, if we compare with what happened in our countries, are not necessarily those we are thinking of. Public spending and public subsidies will play a major role, and I'll give you an example, which is somehow worrisome, but of course there will be adjustment in the future of the market. For instance, in Spain you had a subsidized fuel for tractors, and currently, I look at the Castilian region, for instance, the farmer has to pay, I think, 0.90 cents to get 1 liter of fuel, and because it's subsidized by the state. And there are plans to remove this subsidy. And apparently it looks fine, but if the farmers are to pay 1.3 as like you would buy the oil at the pump, at the gas station, that will have a major impact on his income, because the average income for farmers in this region is about 6,000 euros per year. So it means that he will lose 20% of his income due just to a policy change in terms of subsidizing the fuel. So a minor change could have major impact, while major changes might have sometimes a very low impact. So it will be very interesting for those countries to see how it will go, due to their financial situations, with all these kind of subsidies and exemptions which have been given in the past. Furthermore to this, we have a success story, at least to share, in this kind of public scheme, especially in Germany, but it's not a Mediterranean country, but it's the same in Italy. You had a boom of biogas farms, for instance, and what would be the situation in the future? That's very interesting. Will they be able to keep the same prices when they sell on the grid? And of course, that triggers a lot of demand in terms of machinery. And perhaps it's very difficult to predict, but this kind of structural change might really impact the region. Besides this, I think that there is a clear need in the Mediterranean countries to go for more human productivity, better qualified people, and that requires a lot of training. We should still invest in farming, and in terms of better practices. I mean, in the last 30 years, this sector suffered a lot from underinvestment. That has to change. I mean, we have still the duty to feed the world, and we had a lack. I think the good economic conditions might change that. Yeah, that would be a kind of general perspective, and to give a final statement on this. There is not one Mediterranean country. If you take Turkey, Portugal, and Italy, and Spain, they are very different. So it's difficult to make only one assessment. Thank you.
We were talking about situation in some Mediterranean countries, but currently with the crisis, especially financial crisis we are talking about, I would address Mr. Lambro to see whether he's seen, because he has strong market share in southern countries, whether the demand of agricultural machinery, whether in volume or price, has been affected.
Again, if we look at this area, we have seen that what we call the European and Mediterranean countries, so Italy, Portugal and Spain, probably in the next future will be balanced themselves. We have seen also the cap probably will be negative for Italy, positive for Spain and Portugal. So I don't think that we will have a big expectation of market growth there, but not even a big drop. I mean, for us, the opportunity in this region, and of course, if you look at the northern part of Africa, even if we have to see what is going to happen after this social, I mean, this turmoil, what's happened, because if we see the market today is around, if I'm wrong, in North Africa, of tractor between 5,000 and 6,000 units, so it's not a big market. 2 years ago was 9,000, and if you split this market, you see that Morocco is counting more or less about 80%, so it's really concentrated. It's also true that a lot of farmers, especially from Spain, and we have a lot of customers that are buying Spain, but they are making investment there. So for sure this is an area of opportunities that we see in the medium term, not in the short term, but the medium term, positive. For us, the biggest area of opportunities, and again we can debate if it's a Mediterranean area or is a bridge with Asia, is Turkey. So last year Turkey was 64,000 tractors, one third of Europe. So if you consider the size, and okay, I don't want to, since our Gilles knows very well the statistics, but I think that all of us know how is important the agricultural sector in Turkey. I mean, it's counting for almost 50% of the global, the land that in Turkey are devoted to agriculture is 50%, and is by far above the average in Europe. The people that are employed in agriculture is very, very big. Of course, Turkey, it's really a big opportunity. Then we don't expect that next year or the coming year the record level will still be kept, but overall it will be positive. So if we say a neutral effect on the European part, some opportunity in North Africa, and again including Libya, we have to see what's happened in Algeria. I think Morocco will be stable, and Turkey will still maybe a little bit down, but a good volume. So overall, the business could be slightly positive, and I don't think that this will affect production, even price. Then, of course, again, we are talking mainly about medium horsepower tractor, while we see that the tendency is more versus high, big horsepower, precision farming. So there will be also an evolution there, not now, but this probably will be the second step of the evolution.
In any case, regarding the Mediterranean and being keen on that, you think that some of the global agreements, like for instance Mercosur, European Union, with a permanent reduction of import tariffs, will affect somehow Mediterranean farming? In this case, I address you, Mr. Dicker.
Yes. There are the EU Commission did studies on this and studied different scenarios, and doesn't matter which scenario finally will happen. Such type of agreements, especially the EU-Mercosur agreement, would affect the agricultural sector in Europe, negatively affect this sector. Figures are turning around saying the losses could be from minimum 1 billion euros, but up to 7.7 billion euros. So it's quite important. It's quite important effects on the European agriculture sector. On the other hand, it's not expected that there will be so many positive effects on other sectors, on other industries. So from our point of view, such an agreement has more negative aspects than positive aspects. In detail, which sector of the agriculture would be most affected? Scientists say that first of all the beef sector would suffer, and here mainly France would be concerned. It is estimated that 525,000 tons of beef will enter the European market coming from the Mercosur, and that we in the EU will reduce our production by 280,000 tons. So, and this is a loss of around 4.6 billion euros. They also say that the import of vegetables and fruits will increase. This mainly will affect the Mediterranean countries, Italy, Spain, maybe the Netherlands. Sugar imports will increase. On the other hand, it's estimated that the import of oil seeds will decrease because we will produce less beef, so we don't need so much protein. You'll see overall there are more negative effects on the agriculture than positive effects.
That's a bit of a problem. I think in any case we could think whether the situation in some of the surrounding countries could affect especially the European industry. I'm talking now about going to jump on the situation on say in Africa on the whole. Say not so long ago, a few days ago, AFCO had a summit on the future of Africa as regards to farming. And then I would like to ask Mr. Nordhauser to give us just a glimpse. And I think we should be short in our answers because otherwise we are left with almost no one. So we are a third and 1 hour ago. So could you just give us in a couple of minutes a glimpse of what was your conclusions with the African situation, especially now with the acquisition of land and the trend of...
I think, I don't know who has been to our Africa Summit in Berlin. Julio, you've been there, right? Yeah. It's interesting. Everybody talks about the BRIC countries, but nobody really talked in our industry too much about Africa as a continent. However, if you look at the challenges, 9 billion people by 2050, most of that growth being in Africa. We have to increase food production by 70 to 140%. So this is the challenge, and the question is, of course, how do you do it? And we work very closely with the World Economic Forum that have developed a global vision for agriculture, and they basically say that we have to increase food production every decade by 20%. With that more of food production, we have to lift people out of extreme poverty by 20%, so we have to create economic opportunity, and that is what agriculture is about. And at the same time, we have to do it in an environmentally responsible way, and there the greening comes in, which we fully support, and that means 20% less emissions per decade per ton. All that is fine if you look at it, and we then, of course, as an equipment manufacturer, ask ourselves, how can we achieve these 20%? And mechanization is of course a key area, and I think we have all the solutions for that. But another one is of course land reserves. And when we talk about land reserves, we always think Brazil and we think rainforest. That's not good. So we don't want to basically exploit the rainforest and have more land in Brazil. And the second that springs to our mind is Russia and Eastern Europe, but the reserves actually there are not that big. And the biggest reserves, 60% of the reserves, it's 600 million hectares of fertile land, rests in Africa. Because Africa is only plowing 20% of their reserves, what they have. So you have a huge potential to basically go into Africa and to develop that unplowed land. Now coming to your discussion on the northern territories with the land availability and how we can basically get a hold of the land, that's true. There are some uncertainties in the north right now, but there are a lot more clarities in other parts. Take Zambia, take Mozambique, take South Africa. I mean, this is really a huge potential that we basically see for mechanization and bringing new land under the plow, By the way, also for infrastructure, which is the reason why ACCO has purchased GSI, which is a grain handling and grain infrastructure company, because we basically think that it's not only mechanization, it's also the storage issues. So we have then taken, and then I come to the point, we've taken the global vision for agriculture and basically said, what does it mean for Africa? And we have brought together politicians, we have brought together ag manufacturers. So we had, with the exception of our direct full-line competitors, Claas, Deere, and CNH, we had pretty much the wide range of the European ag manufacturers there. And most importantly, we brought investors to the party, because we believe that without foreign investments and without companies that are already today plowing land in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, without their investments into Africa, it will not happen. So we brought all these to the party, and the target that has been set there and was that we'd like to see 100 million hectares coming under the plow newly in Africa over the next 10 years. And what this does to our industry, and to the fertilizer industry, the mechanization industry, is huge. As a response of that, we at ACCO usually see things more positive. We basically committed ourselves to invest 100 million over the next 2 years on the African continent. And we're going to invest in 3 areas. The first one is training and model farms. You mentioned it, Monsieur Doncourt, that training also in Western Europe could be increased, but for sure it could be increased in Africa. So we are basically having a model farm concept where we are fairly open. We started this in Ethiopia, we have a running farm, Algeria, Morocco, South Africa, and Ethiopia, I said, and Zambia. These are the first farms that are going to be finished this year. The first target is to have more than 20,000 people trained every year. So that is one area we invest. The second area is, of course, parts availability. So we have just made a huge investment into South Africa for a parts warehouse. We're going to have another parts warehouse in some other areas in Africa. We're going to talk about that also. And the third one, and I think that's the most important one, is assembly and local manufacturing. And that comes back to the point there. I mean, we had manufacturing in Libya for many, many years. We couldn't drive it because of the political circumstances. I think the political changes that are happening are helping us tremendously as a manufacturer, and we will go with manufacturing into Africa. So overall, we are extremely positive. We think it's crazy to only talk about BRIC and to leave Africa out, and Africa is going to be the hot topic in the years to come to solve the world food problems.
Thank you. Another item that is that now globalization is taking care. We have just 3 questions to end. So just give us 10 minutes and we'll be on. Main item main question where I was going to point to you is, in this case, Mr. Driancourt, is that the role of European agriculture, it seems that because these other countries are somehow boasting up as regards to facilities and means for production, in which way could we say that globalization could continue affecting European farmers, and in any case the leading role of the European Union, is it going to lose pace or not?
Well, very good question. In fact, I give a very short answer, so that
no.
I won't keep. No, you have. It's possible.
No, please.
It's possible. It's yes. So no, I'll be a little bit longer. Of course. Well, I'll come back to. It's not really globalization which is impacting all farmers. It's I would, but it's a personal view, fear more that we are not able to set up a global frame for trading. And the fact is that we are still lacking a World Trade Agreement on trade. And of course, if we are seeing bilateral agreements developing, we might be kept apart. And for instance, we have an example. There is a kind of agreement now between Brazil and China, and the deal is about China to supply some equipment to Brazil. It's a very short summary. It's more complex than this, and the Chinese get the soya beans from Brazil. What I mean by that is that we could see a world which would be more based on bilateral agreements, where we could be really skipped. And that would put at stake our policies, I mean, on GMs, products, on emissions and so forth. And we could have a scheme where machinery could be imported from the rest of the world besides the EU, and these countries would be supplied by other countries' agricultural production. That's the fear. I mean, that's the real concern I would have, and therefore we have really to push for a world trade agreement that's more multilateral than bilateral. That's the answer. And since it's the last question, I'd like to make two concluding remarks. I do not forget that I came on behalf of CIMA. Next time I promise I'll come with a green and yellow hat and I'll give more insights from their perspectives, but that was not my role today. First of all, I'd like to thank very much CIMA for inviting me. I really enjoyed this session. It was, and also there is a very reason for that, is that I think that the Spanish agricultural equipment manufacturers should be better represented in Brussels. I can see from my daily work with SEMA that the Germans, the Italians, a little bit less the French, are very well organized with very concise positions. I do not have exactly the same feeling about the Spanish industry. You should be represented. Ignazio is making a great job, but I think sometimes he's feeling a little bit alone. So give him support and think about CIMA. It's now the right place to voice your concerns. And with that, I really thank you very much for inviting me today.
Thank you, Mr. President of CIMA. I think it has been a very good point for the industrials that are here present, producing agricultural machinery. The last two questions will be addressed in this case to Mr. Lambro. The question would be, you think that now the farms are going green and they are producing even oil from seeds and they are becoming self-efficient. Do you know that this is the trend for farming in Europe, or they would be specialized in producing just crops as they should be, as this is what is expected from them? Or you think they will be independent from whatever other, say, energetic items?
It's independent firm, so I know it. But consider that this is the last question. I will try really to be short. This could be a very long answer. Okay. But I think that this topic was already touched in the beginning, and this again on sustainability of the agricultural, and of course attention to the development. Of course, the investment that we are looking in this particular sector, and we are talking about emission, starting from the biodiesel or whatever is leading now due to the regulation that is coming from Europe, and we have a lot of discussion in CIMA about exemption or exemption. So we are, I think, quite in line on this activity. Is leading to technology that to be sustainable and profitable for the manufacturer, but also for the farmers, needs investment, as it was said at the beginning. So we are talking big numbers of engine, of volume. And again, we can start here to debate about SCR or EGR, but I think really it will take a lot of time. Any company is taking its decision, that's clear, but I think that the important there is the final solution is that there is improvement. We make some tests, and again, it's not CNH, but I think it's worldwide, that whatever today 100 tractor can create on pollution is what was one tractor 10 years ago, and I think that is good for all of us, whatever is the technology. Then, of course, we have been a little bit further, developing some perspective on the future, and all the big companies are looking about new evolution. I mean, it's not a secret that we have developed internally what we call the energy independent farm with the use of hydrogen tractor. It's a long way, of course. It's a prototype. We had last year a prototype, and again, I think that as an open and friendly competitor, I think that we should also invite you to see our hydrogen power tractor in Turin, near in a farm, by the way, belonging to Agnelli family, so you can understand why he's in Turin. But I think it will be very interesting to see an hydrogen power tractor plowing, seeding, and doing whatever. Then probably I will be not still yet in this position. Probably I will be retirement when this tractor will run in the market. But I think that it's really interesting and challenging, and it's good also big perspective how this business can really develop technology, because all the people are talking about cars, trucks, but I think that the level of technology, the level of investment, the level of a certain way of complexity of the agricultural machinery business, I don't think that is completely clear to all the government or to the business sector. I think this is a very good business. It's creating jobs over worldwide. It's really looking for high in the rank in terms also of emission, and it's a big effort because the economy of scale of the market of tractor is not like cars, and I think that is something that our industry deserves. So I think that we should close ourselves, no matter what, CNH or John Deere or Hatchco or Sam or Class, whatever it is, but I think that we are really keen to this mission, and we as a company, all of us, have invested.
Thank you. Now I come to the last question, but I hope you forgive me because I'm going to ask just two questions. One is addressed to Mr. Artoni, and then is related to communication technologies, new communication technologies. And both of them are addressed, the second one would be to Mr. Moore, and both of them are addressed to them, especially taking into account the networks, which every one of our brands is lined to make the selling. And the first one to Mr. Artoni is internet, Facebook, Twitter, any means to communicate with the market is right, but do you think that there is room, at least currently, for this kind of technologies, for instance, in the, say, agricultural machinery markets, in the ag machinery markets?
Well, I finish as I started, once upon a time. Everybody remembers when we started working with maybe one fax, telephones and telex, and the world has changed dramatically since then. So, of course, communication through information technology is becoming more and more important. It's the future of the business, not only agricultural business, but all the businesses. The first step was done between the manufacturers and the dealers. System interfaces between us and our dealers created better stock control, lower cost, better management of the timing of the dealers, and better margin for the dealers, of course. And the second step came some years ago through the information technology instruments you were talking about. We are working on a new project, two new projects. One is through a tablet and GPS and internet to control in a remote area a tractor and service the tractor and maybe place orders of parts from the field to shorten the breakdown of the tractor. And the second one is we are very proud to say that we in Some of the Star, we have for the first time involved the farmers in a project, and through the web, you all know that we have launched in Agritechnica the 440 horsepower tractor project, and it's a very important step for our company to enter in a big segment throughout the world. And with this web communication, through the web communication, we are discussing with the farmers directly, with the help and the support of our dealers, and we are just experiencing a lot of thousands of answers to the question that we put on the web. So the farmers in Europe are very keen to give us their advices. Of course, we don't develop the tractor just listening to the farmers, but we just want to understand if the direction we have taken in the development of this very important tractor is welcomed by the farmers, and is very, very interesting, and it's a pity we don't have enough time today to share with you some of the comments coming from Germany or from Italy, Spain, UK, and the Nordic and the Baltic regions. Thank you.
Thank you. I was telling you the last question also was addressed to the situation of dealerships and how to help them in many ways, and it is the following. I would ask Mr. Moore in this case, how are you matching in class the situation that being a full liner, in this case having combines, tractors, self-propelled harvesters, forage harvesters, I mean, how do you match the fact that for quite a good number of these machines you need really good technicians at the dealerships? Meanwhile, the number of farmers is being reduced, the number of combines and machinery is being reduced. At least they are bigger and they are able to do more work, and the numbers are being reduced at times. How do you match the lack of technicians in the field with the amount of specs and technology put in the machines? Is it not something which is smashing one into the other?
Yeah, I think already in your question there is a lot of hint to my answer as well. I think today we did talk a lot about changes on the side of our customers, on the side of the OEMs, of us as manufacturers. And I think in between there's the distribution partners, and there also will be change. And in particular to question if some manufacturers develop to long line or full line. On the customer side, maybe some comment there. Customers also, might consolidate. There will be bigger customers. They might use higher tech machines. We did discuss about that. And that is not only about then servicing steel, repairing steel or whatever. It's also about electronics and so forth. And you have to be able, along diagnostics, for example, to handle these kind of issues. So what we manufacturers seek for, and what the customers seek for, is that once they have bought a certain piece of equipment, that is serviced and parts are available and everything is professionally handled, and technicians like you said, are available and capable to handle such issues. On the side of us as OEMs, as manufacturers, I think same issues. We have a growing product portfolio. We have more and more high-tech features. And not only that, we also ask our dealers to be more professional in the regard of territory management, in the regard of whatever kind of process and method is probably put in place between manufacturers and dealers. So there's also demand for change. And I guess in the future these dealers will be around who are capable of handling it, definitely. But they have to develop and they have to change. And in that regard, it might be fewer dealers is a general tendency anyhow. It's nothing new. Fewer dealers, bigger dealers, more exclusive dealers, higher skilled dealers, and those are dealers who serve customers even better than today.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know whether any one of you wants to add anything. No? No comments, additional ones? No, okay. Then, just as a brief summary, first of all, I would like to thank you very much to you all for all this explanation. Probably in some instances have been too long, because we've been about 1 hour and a half with the discussion, which is probably much more than watching a football match, even a boring one. But I think we have seen some light as regards to at least to our local depressed market. And I'm talking local means now, because as you have shown in this case, Mr. Wissendorfer has shown us that probably the most depressed market in the last 2 or 3 years has been the Spanish one. So first of all, I think it's good that you bring us some light and some information, direct information, telling us that we may not going very properly, but we are surrounded by countries which are going on pretty well as regards to the farming situation and as regards to especially to the selling of agricultural machinery. So first of all, we see a glimpse of hope, which is very good, and we appreciate that very much. Secondly, one item I think we could also point out is that on top of having a good European market, we have some other markets in the northern Africa, even in Africa, which have already the presence of some local ones. And again, I'm sorry to be focusing the item in the Spanish situation, which are going to those markets to do some farming, to do farming. They are investing to do farming. So there should be hope also that there is room for new markets which are not too away from us. And on top, we are part of Europe, and I think it has been clear that the CAP will somehow benefit still the European farming, especially that one from some southern countries in which we are. And as I was telling you at the beginning, the situation in this particular country where we are now is a bit lousy, so it is good that we receive some hope and good impressions from you, because it helps us pretty much to overcome this situation. Thank you very much for that. And then on top of knowing that there is hope for that, I'm sure that, as you have been pointing out, the European Union is now, I would say, struggling to survive even the difficulties we may have. And on top, we've been seeing here that we have debts which we have to attend. There are some other countries or some other areas of the globe, say United States, USA, where you were saying that if we have some debts, there are some people who still have some more than us. I don't think that's something which is good to reckon, but to recognize. But in any case, it is good that we know that if we are in the right direction, we are going in the right direction, we'll be able to cope up with these difficulties, financial difficulties we have at present. And then with the tradition we have of creation, and with the help of, say, countries like Germany and central other countries like Germany and France, which are here represented, and the creativity of Italy, for instance, which is also pretty well represented, will be able, all of us together, to really go forward and give the right steps to somehow see that in a couple of years, when we have the next Medwins, we are able to see that we are steps ahead and steps before, and we can talk about the new CAP, which at that time will be already in place. Thank you very much for coming to Zaragoza, leaving somehow your daily work, which I'm sure that is pretty tight, and this meaning really an effort for you to leave your occupations, daily work, and then we appreciate very much having you here, and we hope to see you sometime in next FIMA or other shows in Europe, or even in your central headquarters. Thank you very much to you all for attending this meeting and for being able to stay there 2 hours and a half, which is pretty good. Thank you to you as well. And we hope to see you in a couple of years with Medwins edition number 3. Thank you very much.